I guess we're live. This is my first live, and I'm gonna start um, like trying to go live a lot more with about subjects that these. There's so much out there that people don't know about, and like all everyone wants to do is talk shit about each other, lower everyone's self-esteem, and I'm not down for that. I don't get down like that. I don't have to freaking knock people and to make myself feel better. Hopefully I'll be J7's co-host. But I wanted to go over a case about, his name is Shayne Stilphen. Shayne was in custody at BPD in District 4, and he overdosed while in his jail cell. I mean, these officers walked by and just, they didn't do anything. They essentially kicked the can down the road. Um, I I didn't want to read the entire thing, but there's they all did interviews, and um, okay, we'll have to make this a couple of streams. Okay, so I'll just read it. On February 13, 2020, at 7:27 a.m., Sergeant Detective Lucas Taxter and John Fitzgerald conducted an audio interview of Boston Police Officer Paul Michael Bertocci within the offices of the Internal Affairs Division at Boston Police Headquarters. Officer Almeida was represented by attorney Paciaco, whatever the hell it is. Prior to the interview starting, Bertocci was provided with a copy of Police Commissioner's memorandum. Discipline, that doesn't even apply because these people do whatever the fuck they want. Prior to the interview starting, Bertocci was provided with a copy of At the time of this interview, Bertocci had been a sworn member of the department approximately 2.5 years. Bertocci acknowledged that he worked the last half of July 13th into July 14th, 2019 in the DK01A with Officer Kevin Butcher. At about 1 a.m. on the 14th, Bertocci and Butcher arrested Shayne in the area of 36's Mass Ave. I don't like to say those numbers. After he was positively identified as being responsible for breaking into a motor vehicle. During his interaction with Shayne, Bertocci did not observe any signs that caused him to believe that Shayne was under the influence of drugs or in need of medical attention. Shayne was placed in a holding cell when he arrived at District 4. Bertocci interacted with Shayne during that time and made no observations that Shayne was under the influence of drugs or in need of medical attention. Bertocci did observe Shayne leaning forward at one point when he brought him a carton of milk. However, Shayne sat up immediately and when he entered the cell. Bertocci also assisted during the booking procedure. At one point, Shayne leaned forward toward Freire while she was trying to take his fingerprints, using his hands. Bertocci guided Stilphen into an upright position. Bertocci testified that Shayne was coherent and able to answer all questions asked of him, followed by all instructions, and did not fall over. Bertocci did not recall hearing Almeida ask Shayne if he had any medical conditions, but acknowledged that it was part of the booking process. At no time did Shayne say that he was under the influence of drugs or that he needed medical attention. Bertocci acknowledged that Shayne displayed some lethargic characteristics of a drug user. He added that it is common to see this in District 4, especially during the last half shift, where the large number of prisoners are also drug abusers. Now, I got something for common sense investigator. This is what you call investigating, okay? This is Shayne Stilphen, okay? This is what you call investigating. Flagging, highlighting, all of this. This is what you call investigation. Just FYI. After Stilphen was placed into cell 19, Bertocci brought him a sandwich and some milk. That's the second time. They all bring him sandwiches and milk. Similar to when he was in the holding cell, Shayne was again sitting down and leaning forward. Under direct questioning, Bertocci testified that this did not cause any concern because Shayne stood up immediately and took the food. Bertocci also testified that he had received naloxone training in the academy that included the signs and symptoms of someone who had overdosed. Bertocci did not observe Stilphen display any such signs. Bertocci had no information about Shayne's missing clothing. On December 16, 2019, at 9:25 a.m., Sergeant Detective Lucas Taxter and Michael Hansen conducted an audio interview of Lieutenant James Foley within the offices of the Internal Affairs Division at Boston Police Headquarters. Lieutenant Foley was represented by Attorney Patrick Bryant, Lieutenant Timothy Kervin, and Sergeant Jeannie Carroll. Sorry guys, I gotta put the camera on for outside so I can watch my dogs. Oh shit, my phone. Sorry. Gotta watch the doggos. You know what I mean? Okay, we're good now. This better go over here before I end up spilling it all over my shit. Okay. Bertocci had no information about Shayne's missing clothing. Interview of James Foley. On December 16, 2019, Taxter and Hansen conducted. Foley acknowledged that he worked a morning watch overtime shift at D4 on Sunday, July 13th into the 14th, as the duty supervisor. Although Saturdays are typically busy nights on D4, this night was particularly busy. Foley explained that earlier during the shift, a prisoner had been transported D4 from an arrest on C6, the result of a citywide officer in trouble call on Mass Ave. Upon arrival in the Sally Port, the prisoner refused to exit the rear of the transport wagon. This prisoner was then severely injured himself, an act that resulted in full notifications being made. The homicide unit and crime scene investigators responded, processed the scene, and departed approximately 5:30 a.m. They had that shit cleaned up, done, out, peace out, see ya. At approximately 5:50 a.m., Officer Doolin notified Foley that Shayne was unresponsive and in distress. Foley retrieved several doses of naloxone and responded to cell 19, where other officers had already begun CPR. Officers administered 3 doses of naloxone and continued CPR until the arrival of EMS. Shayne was subsequently transported to Tufts Medical Center. Sometime later, Foley was informed that Shayne had passed away in the hospital. Foley recalled that Pankovich called from the hospital and spoke with Sergeant DeLeo, who then notified Foley. Under direct questioning, Foley testified that he did not recall instructing Pankovich to retrieve Stilphen's clothing from the hospital, nor did he recall if DeLeo did. Foley also testified that he did not recall seeing Pankovich bring Shayne's clothing into the duty supervisor's office. I don't recall. I wasn't in the DS office at the time, he said. Foley did not recall if he discussed Shayne's clothing with anyone that morning or what happened to it. I don't recall. Homicide would have been responsible for that. Foley testified that he made no observations of Shayne prior to, during, or after he was booked. Under direct questioning, Foley testified that the cell block monitor in the day supervisor's office was operable that morning. However, he did not make any observations of Shayne. Foley explained that the prisoner monitor was located on the desk behind him. Foley further explained that the prisoner monitor is rather small, with multiple 1.5-inch camera views from a height of 8 feet. Foley also noted that he was busy that morning attending to his many other duties. Foley further testified that prior to 5:50 a.m., no one advised him that Shayne was under the influence of drugs or alcohol or in need of medical attention. Foley testified that he received training in the sure you did. Here we go. Interview of Ishmael Almeida. He says that he acknowledged working the morning tour, watch tour of D4 on Saturday, July 13th and 14th, was assigned as a booking officer. Almeida testified that Friday and Saturday nights are generally the busiest at D4, and many of those arrested are somehow drug-related. Almeida testified that this night was likely the busiest night of his career. Almeida explained that a prisoner severely injured himself in the night, which resulted in the response of the Homicide and Crime Scene Responses Unit, the cleanup squad. Let's see. Later in the shift, Shayne was brought to D4 by officers to the anti-crime unit. Almeida stated that he heard broadcasts related to Shayne's arrest on the radio and knew he was arrested for attempting to break into a motor vehicle. Almeida assisted with the pre-booking search of Shayne in the holding cell, which included collecting his personal property, laces, and belt. So what about his shoes? Okay. Almeida stated that Shayne's socks were also searched. However, Almeida added that there was no probable cause to conduct a strip search of Shayne. You heard that right. No strip search of Shayne. Under direct questioning, Almeida testified that in his experience, strip searches are rarely conducted. During the booking process, Almeida did not make any observations of stifling of Shayne that caused any concern. Almeida stated that although Shayne leaned a few times, he never lost his balance. Almeida added that Stilphen answered all questions coherently and was cooperative throughout his booking process. Shayne told Almeida that he was not injured and had no medical conditions. Almeida noted this on the booking form. Almeida remained in his work area for the entire booking process and observed nothing of concern. Almeida queried Shayne's criminal history and ensured that he was not on the suicide watch list. He described Shayne's booking process as nothing out of the ordinary for a weekend night on D4. Almeida believed there were 6 or 7 prisoners in custody that night, although he did not perform every 15-minute cell block inspection. Almeida was sure that every check was performed. Almeida was sure of this thanks to the alarm system that sounds and flashes lights every 15 minutes as a reminder. It is not uncommon for other officers to perform cell block inspections, especially on busy nights when Almeida is also tending to his many duties as the booking officer. Almeida believed that he looked into each occupied cell during his inspections. He stated that although he may not have stopped and looked directly into each cell, he sometimes uses his peripheral vision. Almeida testified that the prisoner cell monitor was operating that night and is located at his workstation. Under direct questioning, Almeida testified that he did not observe Shayne appear to nod off while in the holding cell, nor did he observe anything that caused any concern while Shayne was in cell 19. Almeida stated that he did not observe Shayne leaning forward and believed that he was sleeping. Almeida testified that he has not seen prisoners in that he has seen prisoners in that position before. Almeida testified that he did not observe Shayne reach into his shorts, nor did he observe Shayne appear to ingest drugs. Almeida noted again that it was a particularly busy night and he was unable to focus his attention solely on the prisoner monitor. Almeida testified that at approximately 5:53 a.m., Doolin notified him that Shayne may be in need of assistance. Almeida responded to cell 19 and found Shayne unresponsive. He also offered a plastic bag of powder and a makeshift straw, apparently made from a piece of the milk carton. Almeida immediately started CPR while Doolin and Bertucci administered Narcan. EMS arrived and continued CPR until Shayne regained a pulse. He was then transported to the hospital. Also under direct questioning, Almeida testified that he received naloxone. Oh, fuck you, I don't want to hear it. Almeida stated that he believed he did everything he could. He was very remorseful. These fucking people, fuck you. Interview summary of Paul DeLeo. Let's see. Everything says the same. I did the interview here with this one. DeLeo acknowledged that he worked a day tour of District 4 on July 14, 2019 as the duty supervisor. DeLeo arrived for his shift at approximately 6:30 a.m. after Shayne was already transported to the hospital by EMS and after Pankovic was instructed to respond to Tufts Medical Center. DeLeo did not answer the phone when Pankovic called the duty supervisor's office to advise that Stilphen had been pronounced deceased, nor did he recall being present when the call came in. DeLeo was not present for any conversation with Foley or anyone else with regard to Stilphen's clothing that had been removed from him at the hospital. DeLeo believes he would have been in the duty supervisor's office at approximately 7 a.m. However, he did not recall being present when Pankovic brought in the bags of clothing or when Pankovic also asked Foley what he should do with the bags. DeLeo's only memory with regard to Shayne's clothing was from later on that day. DeLeo believes Officer Jeffrey Lynch, who was the day tour booking officer, informed her that there was no evidence in the bag in the booking area that contained Shayne's sneakers. DeLeo believes that he called someone at the homicide unit sometime after 7:30 a.m. and either had the sneakers brought to homicide or that someone from homicide came to D4 and retrieved them. DeLeo could not recall who spoke with homicide. However, DeLeo had no memory of a second bag that contained shorts or other items. Days later, DeLeo became aware that Shayne's clothing was missing. He stated he was advised by Captain Sweeney and Detective Wagner from homicide, but he could not recall who informed him first. DeLeo stated that Wagner called him at one point to inquire about the missing clothing. Wagner then responded to D4 to look for items. However, she could not locate them. DeLeo stated that he spoke with Officer McNabb, D4 property officer, who stated he never took custody of Shayne's clothing. DeLeo had no further information regarding the missing clothing. All right. Mitchell had been assigned to the homicide unit for approximately 2 years. He acknowledged that he was on call that morning of July 19, 2019 at 6:23 a.m. Mitchell responded to D4 for a prisoner who had overdosed in a cell. When he arrived, Mitchell observed an ambulance leaving the parking lot with Shayne on board. Mitchell was not present when Pankovic was instructed to go to the hospital with Shayne, nor was he present when Pankovic called the duty supervisor's um, the duty supervisor's office to advise that Shayne had been pronounced dead. Mitchell did not have any conversation with Pankovic either in person or on the phone that morning. Mitchell did not recall speaking with Foley, DeLeo, or anyone else about Shayne's clothing. Mitchell did not observe Pankovic arrive at D4 with Shayne's clothing, nor was he present when Pankovic asked Foley what to do with the evidence bags. Mitchell did not take custody of Shayne's clothing that morning. Sometime later, Mitchell became aware that some of Shayne's clothing was missing. He believed he learned this from Shayne's mother, who he spoke with in front of headquarters. Mitchell then spoke with Detective Wagner and asked her to go to D4 and try to locate the clothing Shayne was wearing when he went to the hospital. Mitchell believes that Wagner took custody of some clothing that was left behind on D4, but not the clothing that Stilphen was wearing when he was transported to the hospital. Mitchell had no further information regarding Stilphen's missing clothing. Interview summary of Jessica Wagner. Wagner acknowledged that on July 14, 2019, that she responded to District 4 for a report of a prisoner who had overdosed. When she arrived, the prisoner, Shayne, had already been transported to Tufts Medical. Later that morning, she learned that Shayne had been pronounced deceased at the hospital. She could not recall what time that was. Wagner testified that on a later date, an officer brought some of Shayne's clothing to the homicide unit: a pair of black sneakers, a ball cap, and a belt. She could not recall when or who the officer was. Wagner provided a photograph of the sneakers. The sneakers were on top of a green plastic bag, possibly a hospital bag, that appeared to be in a clear plastic Boston police evidence bag. The belt was not visible. Wagner testified that on a later date, Mitchell advised her that some of Shayne's clothing was missing, and he asked her to go to District 4 and try to locate the items. Wagner called Pankovic, who told her that Shayne was declared deceased. He brought Shayne's clothing from Tufts Medical Center to D4 and left the bags in the duty supervisor's office. Wagner then went to D4, but was unable to locate any of Shayne's clothing. Under direct questioning, Wagner testified that she did not observe Pankovic on the morning of July 14th, nor did she have any conversation with him on the phone. Wagner had no conversation with Foley or anyone else about Shayne's clothing, nor did she take custody of any that day. I spoke with Detective Wagner on December 14, 2021, and she stated that she responded to D4 with Sergeant Detective Garrett Mitchell on July 14th after receiving full notifications. She stated that she did not take custody of Shayne's clothing. She stated she did not know what officer had brought the bag of clothes to the homicide unit. She also stated that ADA Mingo had returned the clothing to Shayne's mother without looking inside the bag, so she was not sure what had been returned to the facility. So this is a summary of post-mortem toxicology report and cause and manner of death. On August 7, 2019, Dr. Richard Atkinson submitted a post-mortem toxicology report. Medical examiner case number blah blah blah. Heart blood positive for benzos, cocaine, fentanyl, and opiates. Vitreous humor positive for morphine, acetylmorphine, and fentanyl. Femoral blood clozapam 7, aminoclozapam, nordiazepam, oxapan, benzolylclocanine, morphine, and fentanyl. So my question is, why wasn't he? Usually they drug test you, they make you pee in a cup. This is ridiculous. At approximately 1 a.m. on Sunday, July 14th, police officer Kevin Butcher and Bartucci responded for breaking and entering. A review of the cell video evidence revealed that Shayne was first placed into a holding cell at 1:31 a.m., where he was searched by the booking officer, Ishmael Almeida, while Zarnock stood by. Stevens' belt and sneakers were removed. At 1:35 a.m., Officer Paul Michael Bertucci uncuffed Shayne and searched his socks. At 1:42 a.m., Bertocci gave Stilphen a cup of water. At 1:51 a.m., Shayne, now alone in the holding cell, hinged forward at the waist and appeared to fall asleep or nod off. At 1:53 a.m., Bertocci entered the cell, and Shayne sat up immediately when he entered the holding cell. He was not concerned that he had been leaning forward. At 1:55 a.m., Shayne hinged forward and appeared to nod off a second time. At 1:58 a.m., the cell door opened. Shayne stood up and exited the holding cell. A review of the booking area video surveillance revealed that Zarnock escorted Stilphen from the holding cell to the booking desk at 1:58 a.m. Two officers assigned Almeida with the booking process, Bertocci and Frere. Officers Bertocci and Frere and Almeida testified that Shayne spoke coherently and followed instructions and answered all questions asked of him. A review of video evidence showed that Shayne was swaying and appeared to have some difficulty standing still. At one point, Bertocci placed his hand on Shayne's back, while Frere took his fingerprints. Bertocci testified that Shayne was leaning toward Frere and making it difficult to take his prints. So he guided Shayne into an upright position with his hands. Frere testified that Shayne wobbled back and forth, and she told him to stand still. After Shayne was printed and photographed, he signed the booking forms and was escorted to cell 19 by Frere and Bertocci. A review of cell 19 video evidence revealed that Shayne was placed into the cell at 2:21 a.m. A short time later, Shayne leaned forward at the waist and appeared to fall asleep. Bertocci appeared at the door and knocked on it. Shayne lifted his head, stood up, and walked to the cell door and accepted the milk. After drinking it, Shayne looked at the video camera, reached into the back of his shorts, and removed an item. Shayne then manipulated the item, leaned forward at the waist, and although not viewable in the shot, appeared to ingest drugs. Shayne repeated this several times until he apparently fell asleep while seated on the bench. Legs crossed in front of him, hinged forward at the waist. Shayne remained in that position for approximately an hour before waking up. At 4:40 a.m., while seated on the bench with his legs crossed, now mind you, The last time he was checked on was at 2:21. At 4:40, while seated on the bench with his legs crossed in front of him, Shayne tore off a piece of paper from a sandwich wrapper and proceeded to manipulate it with his hands. Reached in his right hand behind himself. Marshall did not look into cell 19 at the time. A few seconds later, Marshall looked into cell 19 as he walked by again. Stilphen stood by. Shayne, wait a minute. Looked at a few seconds later. Marshall looked into the cell. Walked by the cell, and Shayne simultaneously reached his right hand behind himself. Marshall did not look into cell 19 at the time. A few seconds later, Marshall looked in cell 19 as he walked by again. Shayne still had his right hand behind his waist and likely inside his pants. Although the angle of the camera inhibited a clear view of Stilphen's right hand. Shayne appeared to fall asleep again for about 3 minutes until 4:46 a.m., at which point he removed the plastic bag from his buttocks. Shayne manipulated the bag and leaned forward at 4:48 a.m. His legs were still crossed in front of them. Although out of sight, this is likely when Shayne ingested more drugs. He remained in this seated position, with hinged forward at the waist with his legs crossed before him. For approximately 1 hour, until 5:52 a.m. During that time, Almeida walked past the cell 5 times. 4:56, 5:06, 5:21, 5:35, and 5:37. After a review of the video surveillance from cell 19 showed that Shayne showed signs of possible agonal breathing at 5:06. Stilphen showed no further signs of breathing or movement after 5:06. At 5:39 a.m., Marshall placed a sandwich. This was at 5:06. There was no sign of breathing. Marshall comes at 5:39. Placed a sandwich and a carton of milk in the meal slot. He added that his observations of Shayne were not unusual, based on other prisoners. 5:51 a.m., Doolin looked into the cell and observed Shayne. Doolin wrote in his Form 26 that he was in a resting position and looked as if he would be of extreme discomfort for most individuals. I'm going to end at that. And I will continue this story. I have also another story of Christian Geigel. He also died in custody at the same station. I forget what date. This stuff like this, it breaks my heart, and there's so much shit out there that people could, this common sense investigator, she really got me. She got me. And I'll see you guys later. I don't know, what does this mean? She has green? Hold on. What the fuck, guys? Hold on, so I can share? So what do you do? I don't know how to do this. All right, well, I don't know how to do this. Somebody's got to teach me. This isn't right. What is this? I don't know what I'm doing, guys. I hope you. I'll get this. I'm hoping to go on with J7. All right, everybody, I love you. Please subscribe. I don't know what I'm doing. Oh, okay. What's this? Entire screen. I don't. Okay, so what's window? What's Microsoft? Select tab to add. Okay, so let me see. I'll select. Um. Okay, let's select that. So am I sharing that with you guys? Okay. Diana's gonna have to figure this out. What's this? What do you do here? What does this mean? Concurrent viewers zero, chat rate zero, view zero. How is that excellent? It's saying it's excellent. I'll get up there. Common sense investigator. I'm on to you. Bye, guys. Love you.